Hey guys, today's episode is with Justin Mast of Bloomscape. We talk about how he took his family's garden supply business and turned it into an online version that was venture backable. We talk about raising capital from Detroit. His company is based in Detroit, not a hotbed of venture activity. We talk about tips for finding a lead investor, which is pretty critical when raising venture capital. If you like this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment what you like. And if you do that, email me at info@foundersuite.com and I will send you a list of 500 lead investors. This is a list of 500 investors that prefer to lead around. Very critical to find a good lead investor when you're raising capital. So hit the subscribe button, leave a nice comment, email at info@foundersuite.com and I'll send you that list. For now, enjoy the show. Thank you.
Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by Foundersuite.com. Today I have Justin Mast of Bloomscape coming to us from Detroit. How's your day going?
Good. Great to be here.
Well, very good. Well, let's jump right into it. What is Bloomscape? What do you guys do?
So Bloomscape is a digitally native garden center. So we have a big vision or mission to reinvent the garden center for this new generation of gardener. We started just about 2.5 years ago, focused on indoor plants. We really came up with a way to ship these much larger, fully grown, like 5-6 foot tall, tropical indoor plants through FedEx and UPS to any zip code in the United States 12 months out of the year. So, our plants are high quality. They're direct from the greenhouse. They ship right to your home with packaging that we've designed and a really cool system that helps everything get there safely. And, based on that start, we've grown really quickly. But, to that larger vision, we've launched an edible gardens line, so herbs and vegetables. We're launching into care products and accessories. And then this coming spring, we're going to be launching a line of plants for your patio, outdoor plants.
Oh, fun. Interesting. That sounds cool. Like many Americans, I planted my first garden in March, ran to the CVS or Walgreens, bought a bunch of seeds, planted it and had pretty good success. I had a few ears of corn, a handful of like really skinny carrots and a couple bell peppers and
nice.
It was interesting. It worked.
Starting from seed is challenging. There's a lot of that. Just getting something to be that seedling size is half the battle. And then it can take a little while before it's large enough to start cranking out, corn or tomatoes or something.
I tell you though, it's the ultimate, especially in those early days of the pandemic when there was so much stress, gardening was such the perfect antidote to that COVID stress. So yeah, good. I'm sure did you guys see a crazy big boom during the pandemic?
We did. Yeah. I mean, we saw, our volume practically doubled in a pretty short period of time when the pandemic really hit. And people were, like you said, back home, I think spending a lot of time on their screens, spending a lot more time at their homes with their families and gardening. People have been picking up gardening a lot faster these last couple of years, but this just accelerated that trend even faster.
Very interesting. I think I read on the website, you're a 5th generation gardener. So maybe talk about your backstory a little bit.
Yeah. So my family has been in the greenhouse business. So greenhouse owner operators for a long time. It goes back 5 generations on my dad's side. His dad immigrated from the Netherlands and started greenhouses here in the States. And then on my mom's side, it actually goes back 3 generations of folks in the floriculture world. So cut flower and floral supply for florists and event planners and things like that. So they met in the business, branched off, started their own greenhouse. We grew up in that. Aunts, uncles, cousins, great uncles, second uncle, everyone. This was like very much the world that I grew up in.
I think I read also that you started with a roadside stand as
yes.
a kid.
Yes.
What's up with that?
Well, so I think with that kind of multi-generational history, my parents and my dad in particular really wanted to make sure that his kids had a work ethic and sort of could learn the business like he did. So I was the oldest. They had me kind of working in the greenhouse, maybe a couple hours on a Saturday, even from an early age. But, I think I've been kind of hardwired to be an entrepreneur, and the task of picking weeds under a bench just wasn't very satisfying for me as a 9-year-old. So I had my parents let me sell geraniums out in front of the greenhouse on the street corner. And I loved it. I mean, even as a young kid, I think seeing people, cars kind of line up around the block to buy plants fresh from the greenhouse was pretty cool. I think people were, and you never know how these things will sort of come back around later in life, but it is unique to be able to get product fresh from where it's produced and grown. And I think that a lot of that's carried into what we do right now.
Interesting. Yeah, my grandpa had a big greenhouse and was a grower, and a lot of fun memories of that. I never really worked in the greenhouse, but like it was pretty interesting to see what he could grow up in the mountains of Colorado. Like
sure,
delivering fresh flowers. And
was it carnations?
I don't even remember.
Okay.
I just remember walking into the greenhouse and you sort of smell that humid air, and the temperature goes up 20 degrees or whatever. And
yes,
that experience, pretty interesting. So how do you go from, roadside stand to being a venture funded startup? Or let me ask it a different way. Why not just continue on being a greenhouse, selling flowers? Like, how do you now sort of evolve to become a scalable startup doing this? Talk about that.
Sure. Well, there was a lot that happened between, age of 9 and 35 or whatever I was when I launched Bloomscape, including an earlier version of Bloomscape that I launched right after college. That was a business that had a lot of the same DNA. We were focused on patio plants first. It was direct from the greenhouse. It was digitally native, set up a website, and we were selling patio plants to people around the country. And that's actually where a lot of the technology and the processes we use for shipping these larger plants came from, was that first time around. But I did that with a bank loan that had to be co-signed by my parents. They were not very interested in kind of new digital businesses that were trying to scale at that point. So, when in giving Bloomscape another go the second time around, I was really interested in aligning with capital that I think was just a better fit and with what we were trying to do. And I have a close friend, Kyle Hoff, who is one of the co-founders of Floyd Furniture. They're another Detroit-based startup. They're a digitally native furniture company, and was learning quite a bit from him on how they had been able to use venture backing to really scale and grow their business in a way that I was pretty excited about. So that kind of got me started down the path. I think in studying the direct-to-consumer business model, and at that point, Casper was on its its rocket ship ride, and Warby Park. There were a lot of people who would pave the way, and so I was really studying those models. In some cases, talking to those founders about what was working for them and how they were seeing their business models align with venture capital, and so really kind of took the plunge there and just got started.
Yeah. What happened to that first go at it? Did it fail, or did you sell it off? Or
Well, it was interesting. So it actually was off to a pretty good start when we launched, but we had a major supplier, which was my parents' greenhouse at the time, that went through a pretty big changeover. I had an uncle who bought their facilities, and these were two large kind of businesses and greenhouses coming together. The bank financing was like, this thing doesn't make sense. It kind of just got pinched out of, got pinched out of the deal, and I lost my main supplier. So it just didn't make sense anymore. And I was like 22 or 23 years old at the time, and kind of went on to help start some other businesses or start some other businesses before, Bloomscape was always the project that got away. And was sort of waiting for the right opportunity to relaunch the business ever since that point.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit more about the business. I don't want to get into the fundraising, but do you guys do you guys grow it? Do you have the greenhouses as well as the shipping, or is it more distribution?
It's more distribution. So we do have greenhouse space, and a big part of what we do is when we work with growers who are best in class for the varieties that they grow, but we bring everything into our greenhouse where we clean it and treat it. We repot it. We use, there's a number of things we do that are proprietary to our system, and then we hold it in the greenhouse and then pick it and pack it straight from there when someone hits, buy on the website. So we're more of a plant, I would say kind of the back end mechanics. We're more of a plant logistics company than anything.
Interesting. Is the magic or secret sauce in the, what you just described, kind of the packaging and keeping it alive? I mean, is that kind of the ultimate result?
Yes, that's a big part of it. I mean, shipping a 6 foot tall tropical plant from Michigan to Boston in the dead of winter is no small feat. Doing that 2,000-3,000 times a day to every zip code in the country is a whole other level. So, we do have packaging, some pot technology, pots that the plants are in, technology and soil that we use that is really proprietary to our system. But I would say really when it comes down to it, the secret sauce is more in how we handle that at scale that I think makes us unique.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a risky question. Is it an eco-friendly way of packaging? I can see to keep something alive, it might require a lot of packaging. Have you guys figured out any way to do this kind of eco-friendly, or is it not there?
It is. Yeah, it is. It is actually quite eco-friendly. I mean, when you're buying a plant, let's say you live in New York, if you're buying a plant, whether it's at the Home Depot in Brooklyn or at a little plant shop or from us, it probably comes from the same area of the country. It's probably, tissue culture or like young plants coming from South or Central America, being grown in Florida to maturity and then shipped up. And then it makes its way somehow from Florida to your home, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the difference with us is that it's a cleaner, more direct line. We bring everything up in bulk from our partners, around the country with indoor plants. A lot of it's from the Southeast. And then we hold it and care for it in a greenhouse, and then it's shipped directly to your home from there. A traditional retail route, it'll spend a lot more time in transportation, in warehouses, and then in a retail environment where the plant is constantly degrading its health until it makes it to your home. And hopefully you're an amazing gardener and you can bring that plant back to great health. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of plants die in that process. In most cases, plants are still shipped with a box, even when they're coming up from the South. And so, I think the packaging is probably about the same. I think the distance it travels is roughly the same. I think the difference with us is the plant's just a lot healthier, and you have a much greater chances of having success with that plant.
Interesting. Cool. Let's talk about raising capital for this. So how did you get this off the ground in the early days? How did you find it?
So we've gone through, 3 formal rounds. We started with the seed round, then a Series A. We just closed a Series B and announced that a couple of weeks ago. I think, I'm sure you've heard this from some of your other guests. I think as neat and clean as that looks on Crunchbase, and as I think positive as the headlines typically communicate the story. There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, our seed round was really a spread out raising of fund, capital, starting with friends and family, starting with local kind of, Michigan and Midwest based investors, eventually including coastal investors before it all kind of came together the way that it did. We started with convertible notes. We started doing safes. So that seed round was really kind of a stretched out 2 rounds, like a pre-seed and a seed that we merged together. And then, about a year later, Series A, and about a year later, the Series B.
Yeah. How'd you go let's go seed round just a little bit more. How'd you go from, kind of local based investors to getting into coastal based investors? And how'd you even identify local ones that would play in this somewhat unique space?
It was a predicament. I mean, the friends and family checks, and I think friends and family is sort of shorthand for just people from your network. These are people that in some cases were friends and family, but for the most part were from my professional network. I think people who just sort of knew me, kind of got the idea, but just knew that they were investing in me more than anything. That amount of capital, I think, if that was maybe 150 or 200K, that sounds about right. I don't remember exactly offhand, but that was enough to get a few things going. But we did end up in a bit of a predicament where we have this great kind of local investment community here in Michigan that I think wanted to be supportive, is a tight-knit community, and I think liked a lot about what they were seeing, but just didn't understand the business model. There's not a ton of, at the time especially, there were only a couple of direct-to-consumer businesses or digitally native e-commerce businesses in the area, and so they just didn't have the firsthand experience with it. We were also at the same time talking to other firms, mostly in San Francisco and New York, who were a lot more specialized in early stage investment for our business model. And what we were finding was the local group was saying, hey, we know there are investors out there who understand the business model really well. Why aren't they investing?
Yeah.
And the folks who understood the model really well was asking why don't you have more local support? And so there was this sort of gap between two people that I think together had all the right answers, but separate didn't. And so there was a real art to kind of step by step inching those two groups a little bit closer together until we finally had enough overlap where the thing could sort of take off. And so, that was a real process. In hindsight, it worked. And I think if I've learned anything, it's that success in a fundraise is just getting through the other side of a fundraise. That's about it. So, very proud of that. But at the time, it was certainly, at the time I didn't have the benefit of hindsight, and I had no idea how it was going to shake out. So it was a little bit nerve wracking.
I love the way you sort of framed that or phrased it. You get your West Coast, you get the business model, you get the local people that know you a little bit more. Anything you did to sort of inch those closer together? I know there's probably a 1,000 small things you did, but anything you kind of, because I think that's common for a lot of startups that are maybe in a non-coastal environment. I think your scenario is common. So what'd you do?
Couple practical things, and then a couple of maybe impractical things. But I think practically speaking, using a safe and notes, I think allowed me to raise toward the goal step by step. And so rather than waiting for a lead and then a bunch of people who were ready to follow, we were able to kind of delay or shift that one key moment. Yeah. And I think that allowed for just I don't want to call it micro progress, but progress in smaller steps that started to close in toward the middle or the bigger goal. Mm-hmm. That was really helpful. I think some of it whether, as an entrepreneur, whether you like it or not, there is a fair amount of, I think, like hype and spin that you're trying to create. We, frankly, it takes getting someone almost there and then being able to say someone's almost there to someone else to get them almost there. And there's just kind of a game where you're sort of massaging like the kind of the overall scene and trying to build momentum in any way you can.
Sure.
And frankly, I was not able to complete the seed round and raise that money before we launched the business publicly as I had planned. And so we were about a third of the way into the fundraise, and we were getting close to the target launch date, and we weren't closing it. And I had a choice to make whether to delay the launch or not. And my belief at the time was, I think this launch is going to blow a lot of people away. I think we're going to see early traction from customers. I think the brand is going to speak for itself. One of the big questions at the time was whether or not you could start a brand like this from Detroit, or whether you had to be in LA or New York or San Francisco. So I thought, the pushback I'm hearing, I think we can prove out really quick in the first month of launch. And so we launched without the capital we needed to fund the full launch. And it actually did work. The early traction we got, both like, I think customer reviews, popularity in the press, and early like revenue was enough to tip a handful of people who were just like almost there, but not quite, over the finish line.
But was it that you just didn't have the capital that you want to blow out the launch, or that you might run out of money? Because I think that's a different scenario, right? Like if you're launching, like, I hope this helps us close, but we could run out of money in 3 months.
We would have run out of money.
Yeah. That's a big bet. I mean, that's a big bet that a lot of entrepreneurs have to take, right?
It is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is a lot about calculated risk. Mm-hmm. We had done very thorough analysis on the opportunity in the market. We knew how to ship the plants, the brand. I was just very excited about the brand, how we were able to tell our story. There are certainly moments where you have to push your belief in what you're doing up against, and take a leap with both feet. And that was certainly one of those moments.
I love it. Let's go to Series A a little bit. So that was led by Revolution. Any anecdotes in putting that round together?
Yeah, I think, we had a lot of momentum going into that Series A. I think I had kind of what turned out to be a false belief that the round would just come together and go really quickly and easily, and it didn't. I remember a trip out to California. I went to San Francisco, stayed in a hotel room for 2 weeks, and just like did the circuit. And there's just a lot more work that goes into it than it appears like it will need to. And so we were having good conversations. We were talking to people, but again, getting the term sheets, which catalyzed all the other term sheets, we were really coming up to it wasn't like a dangerous point, anything like the seed, but it was taking work. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
But I'm amazed round after round how you do really eventually, I think, find the most forward momentum and traction with people that really best understand you and your business model and where you're coming from. And I think what was really nice about Revolution and a couple of other people we were talking to is that I could tell we were having the right conversations right from the beginning. We weren't defending why we're not on the coast. We weren't talking about any number of like kind of other hesitations that felt off base. We were cutting right to the chase and having discussions about like our biggest strategic advantages and issues. And that that conversation with them, I think, is thanks to a lot of their work. They've made an art out of finding high value, promising startups off the coast.
Yeah.
Steve Case's Rise of the Rest, and his thesis around investing lined up really nicely with who we were and what we were trying to do. And so, I think I'd like to say, hey, we really looked for fit from the beginning. Of course we were, but we were also talking to, as many people as possible to see where it would land. And, that was a group where I think the fit, the momentum, everything lined up really nicely. And, we really wanted to work with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very interesting. Couple interesting names on your cap table from them, like Kevin Hartz, the Eventbrite founder, Jen Rubio, the Away. How did you get connected with these folks? And any anecdotes of pitching them? Sure.
I mean, it's almost like there's two parts to a fundraise. I think especially for us, at least, at Series A, Series B, there's finding the lead. And then there's building the sort of strategic group or to fill in any remaining gaps or holes, be they, capital or otherwise.
Yeah.
In both our Series A and our Series B, we had leads who were completely willing to invest the whole amount of what the entire amount we were trying to raise. In both cases, we asked the leads to pull back a little bit and allow us to bring in some strategic, some other strategic folks. And so with the Series A, we worked with Revolution to create a little room, and it was kind of a second raise. I mean, just to go out, talk to people that we were friends of friends with or connected to through an existing investor or through this or that. And, that process went really well. I think in the Warby Parker, Allbirds, Away, Harry's founders, we really met some other direct to consumer companies that we really look up to and see as people who've paved the way and really done an amazing job, and just talk to them directly. I think they saw something really unique in what we're building. I think they saw a lot of things that felt familiar to them, but there's also some things we're doing that I think felt interesting and innovative to them as well. And so those were quick conversations. I think one thing that's so great about the startup community is founders are really looking to and get a lot of joy out of investing in other founders. And so, with that group, and then, talking with Kevin and Julia Hartz from Eventbrite and Charlie Cheever from Quora and others, I think people saw something that they liked and just, those are really fast conversations.
Yeah. Great. Very cool. Let's make sure we get Series B as well. That was a $15 million, and you just finished it up quite recently. So talk about putting that together. And I'm assuming the pandemic and the sales boost that contributed to making that round easier, or you tell me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it did and it didn't. It was a mixed bag. I mean, I think one of the nice things about raising a Series B as opposed to the A or C is we just have more traction. There's more developed. There's more we can point to, and less we have to theorize. That balance is a little bit different. So that was nice. I think the momentum that we've had in general, but also through the pandemic, certainly was a nice boost. I think as much as people, like to look at a business holistically, that top line growth is just the easiest thing to look at and get excited about. And so it's nice when you can just check that box. It was clear we are at an inflection point. Yeah. So that was great. Another thing that was really nice is, being based here in Detroit, all the first meetings, all the first couple of conversations were just so much easier. Could set up Zoom calls and have good conversations right away without having to worry about where people are, in a city, let alone across the country.
Yeah.
And so the scheduling and the kind of mechanics of that were a lot easier. I think there were a couple things that made it quite complicated. Number one, a raise is a relationship building exercise as much as it is a quantitative assessment of two parties deciding whether they do and don't want to work with each other. And so that relationship building piece, I think particularly for us, or at least the way I think about building a board and building a group of stakeholders around this company, you're trying to like reach through the screen and do that. And it's slower, it's harder. And I think that does slow things down in a way. And I think the other part of that is, I think as much as investors are out there saying they're open for business, and they are, right? They have capital, they have the green light to invest it. I think the pandemic has frustrated a lot of people's models and the things, sort of benchmarks and the beacon points that they use to like push them over the edge into making an offer. And so that, I think, on the one hand, in talking to people, I think there's businesses that have done really well in the pandemic, and some that have done very poorly in the pandemic. I think, and very few that are just unaffected. Almost no one's unaffected by it. And if you're doing really well, that's a good start. But I think investors look at that and say, how do we know that? Is this temporary? Is this long term? Right. And there's just, how long is this going to last? What happens when this? What happens when that? And I think that that uncertainty it makes it weird. And so we certainly dealt with that. The group the group whose term sheet we accepted and that we're now working with kind of saw through that, and I think they were able to have a thesis and get behind us. But there, for every one conversation that goes right, there's 10 or 12 that get weird, and so we certainly had that.
Did you end up meeting them face to face, or did you close a Series B over Zoom?
We did meet face to face. Yeah, and that was a big part of it. Bob Mylod, who was essentially a co-lead in the round along with General Catalyst, happens to be based here in Detroit, and he's someone, and so we were able to get together and do a safe and distance and masked interaction in person. And it makes a big difference, and then we were able to he hosted a dinner at his house with a number of folks from General Catalyst and his team, and folks from our team. And we had that moment. He came out and visited the greenhouses with some folks on his team. So I think those are the things that there's a lot of intangible or nonverbal communication that's taking place in those moments.
Yeah, good. Very interesting. Well, very good. If people want to learn more, it's simply bloomscape.com, correct?
Yes.
Very good. Anything you want to promote or plug? Any favorite plant bundle or something that's going on special for?
Well, I'll say for any of the new plant parents or plant lovers out there, we recently just acquired a plant care app called Vera that is a really helpful tool for helping people care for their plants. It's got a lot of great content. So if you've got a palm at home that's looking a little yellow, we've got the troubleshooting in there to help you with that. And you can set reminders for watering and repotting and fertilizing and all the stuff that you have to do. Cool. So check that out, Vera by Bloomscape on the App Store, both iOS and Android.
A free app, a paid app?
Yep, free.
That sounds great. I need that actually. Yeah, I'm learning by attrition how to care for some of these plants. Although I have to toot my own horn. I had an orange blood tree that was in one part and it was just dying. I could see it physically dying every day. I moved it to another part of my property, and it's now blossoming. I'm feeling so proud of it. I know, to you, I'm sure it's like, dude, I do this, 1,000 times a week. But like, to me, this was
there's a real art to it. I mean, everyone's home is different, and you do have to find that right balance for, your home and the plant, and then your own kind of care routine. So good work.
Thanks. I know you're like, dude, amateur, but I feel very proud about this. All right, very good. Well, thank you, Justin. Bloomscape.com. This has been fun, and I'm gonna browse around because I'm kind of getting into this whole gardening thing. It's cool. It's fun.
Well, thank you, Nathan. It was great to be here.
All right, over and out. Have a good weekend.